Welcome to the Billionaire Lifestyle Podcast. This is Emmett Muckles. Thank you for tuning in. You can get the show on iTunes, you can get it on Stitcher, or you can come to emmettmuckles.com. That's EMMITTMUCKLES.com. Today, my guest is Irene Weinberg, and she has a book that is special for you, special for your heart, special for your soul. It is They Serve Bagels in Heaven. This was born out of a traumatic experience that served to expand her consciousness, and hopefully it will expand yours as well. So stay tuned. There's some great information for you. Now, if you ever wonder if they serve bagels in heaven, you're going to find out today.
It's true.
I'd like to welcome Irene Weinberg to the Billionaire Lifestyle Show. Hello, how are you today?
Great, Emmett. I'm doing absolutely wonderfully. I'm very excited to be here.
Good. Now, you've written a book based on some experiences you had in your life, correct?
Yes, I did. And yes, I did. Yes.
And let's talk about the book itself. Let's start at the beginning. Give me how the book came into being, because most people, they say in the back of their mind, I'm going to write a book one day. And some people say, I am never going to write a book someday. And sometimes it's life happens and something manifests, something beautiful manifests out of it. How did yours come to being?
I was in the category of me write a book? No way. I was a really happily married, middle of the road woman, doing my thing, raising my kids. I had a retailing experience. I had been a violinist in my life. Did not believe in spirituality at all. And there was no way, even though I took honors English in high school, there was no way I had any intention of ever writing a book. But something amazing, really amazing happened to me. One day I was washing some dishes in my kitchen sink. I had been married to my husband for about 17 years. And as I'm washing the dishes, suddenly a very strong message came into my mind. And it was a message, Emmett, because it's nothing I would have ever thought. And it said to me, Saul has to go. Many lessons will be learned from his death. And I looked around and I said, what am I thinking? And I went to him. He was on his head, and I thought to myself, well, if he died, so-and-so and who hurt, and then all of a sudden I said to myself, what are you doing? And I put it completely out of my mind. And I never said a word about it to anyone because I thought it was crazy. And 2 months later, we were coming home from in the Catskills, where we had been skiing in the Catskills in New York State. And we were on the New York State Thruway, about an hour and a half. And suddenly our car went into a huge swerve. And I looked over at my husband, and I saw that he was sound asleep at the wheel. And I called out to him, and he woke up, and he went to pull the car out of the swerve. And as he did, we started to rise up into the air for the first of 4 flips. Ooh. And as he took off, I got a second strong message. And it said to me, he's not going to make it. You are.
And well, this is within seconds, correct?
Seconds. And who has time to process this wacky thing? Because I'm flipping in the air and I'm getting, he's not going to make it. You are. And we flipped 4 times and we landed upside down in a ravine. I look over at my husband. At the time, I have had 3 major surgeries from the accident. At the time, I didn't, but I was conscious through everything, and this was working fine. There were other things that were hurt and damaged. And I look over at my husband, and I said, Saulie, are you okay? And his entire personality, his entire life force has left his body. And I go, oh, my God. I was told that he was going to die. And I could see that he was dead next to me. We were upside down, and I felt the car suddenly being turned over, and the strong hands of an EMT reached through the window of my car and started pulling me, and of course it was a shattered window, and started pulling me through the window of my car. At the moment that I was going through the window of my car, an unemotional, authoritative male voice, a voice, boomed into my head and just directed me and said, "Be loving and kind to everyone," as they laid me on the side of the road. Well, I don't know about you, Emmett, but this would tend to change your cells as they're multiplying. I mean, like, oh my God. I mean, talk about what's going on. We held up traffic on the thruway for 2.5 hours. A helicopter was hovering nearby to take me to an emergency trauma center. They're tying a tourniquet around my leg to keep me from bleeding to death from a torn artery in the bottom of my foot. My eye had hemorrhaged. My collarbone was reversed inside my shoulder, and I'd lost a ligament in my knee. And I've just been told to be loving and kind to everyone.
And you're in a lot of pain. And
my knee was hurting. I wasn't aware that I was bleeding to death from this, not to death yet, but I ended up having 2 blood transfusions, but from this torn artery. And I know my husband's gone.
So let me ask you, did you have any sense or presence of him in any of this, or was he just gone?
He was gone. But because I got those messages, I mean, he was physically gone, but because I got those messages, I knew, and this is a person who believed nothing. I thought it was, I had a sister-in-law who called herself a spiritual healer, and I thought she was crazy. We weren't talking to her. We used to make fun of her. And now, all of a sudden, this thing happens to me, and it turns I know something is up. And I suddenly feel that he must be around me. I suddenly get, oh my God, it's not over when it's over. I mean, I'm getting a message, a voice and everything. And he must be, and I was told he's not going to make it. You are. I was told he has to go. Many lessons will be learned from his death. So I'm thinking to myself, he must be around me still. And I became very aware, because I'd been given a directive to be loving everyone. I became so aware, Emmett, of every single person in my life. Now, I'm supposedly bleeding to death, and I'm saying to the EMTs, "What's your name? Thank you for coming out." They're putting me in the helicopter to get me to the emergency trauma center. I got a call from the assistant to the surgeon who operated on me that night, and she said, "Irene, you changed lives in the emergency room that night. No one ever saw anyone go through what you did, and instead of screaming about yourself and all of that, all you cared about was everyone around you."
Let me ask you this: when they say everyone around you, so were you referring to, were there other casualties of this situation?
Thank God we did not take anyone else down with us, which is amazing. We were going 72 miles an hour on that thruway, and when we went into the flip and went 4 times and landed upside down in the ravine, we took no one else with us, which thank God. I was very grateful, but I meant, like, I was instead of carrying on about myself, talking to the emergency crew people, talking to the nurses, the way they couldn't believe how I dealt when I had to give the kids the news. We had 3 children that I had to tell them that their dad was gone. It changed my whole attitude. Mm-hmm. I would like to think I was a loving and kind person before, but now when they use that word conscious, oh my God, I'm suddenly conscious of how I'm touching and communicating with and I don't know what it's about yet. I have no proof of anything except that this guy just came into my head and made this announcement.
Was the voice that you heard, was it familiar at all?
Nothing, nope.
It was just, It was as if some stranger came in and basically said, I got a telegram for you and I'm going to read it.
That's exactly what it was like. And it was almost like it was such a strong voice where the others were definite thoughts. But this was an actual voice and like not emotional, but boomed into my head, like making an announcement. Be loving and kind to everyone. And I'm sliding through my cars. They're putting me on the side of the road.
So as you have traversed this experience, what does your life, you go to the hospital, you go through that experience, and you eventually come back home. What transpires in your life after that? I mean, during that moment.
Right. Well, I'm in grieving hell. And, you know, and I've been in the hospital for 3 days, and I come home to all the drama and all the with everybody and everything going on, and I'm in a wheelchair, and I'm traditionally Jewish, so there's the Shiva and all of that going on, and and I don't know why I got these messages. I have no idea, and I'm just going on with my life, not easily. I'm crying and I'm upset and I'm dealing with all these things. And 6 weeks after the accident, I suddenly get a call from my dry cleaner, who's a man named Joel. Now, you could see from my personality, I'm a very friendly girl. So, you know, I talk to people all the time. And all of a sudden, Joel calls me. He says, Irene, I want to tell you something. I don't usually share this story with people, but I think you're a very open-minded person, and I want to share it. Well, I had gotten the messages, so that kind of was expanding my brains. I didn't know what this was all about, but now I'm very receptive, where before I might have said, what? You know, crazy. What? So he said to me, I just want you to know that 8 years ago, my wife and I lost our oldest son to a drug overdose, and there was no one who could console us. And we went to grief counselors and social workers and all these people. He said, and then someone told us that the soul goes on to the other side and survives our deaths. He said, and he gives me all this proof from these sessions that he's had with these different people of how he knows that his son is on the other side. And he said to me, my wife and I are going to see this man who's a medium, who's going to be very famous one day. And we just even did a video for him. And if you come with us they call it a gallery of it. It's a group of people who come to hear from their loved ones on the other side. He said, if you come with us to this gallery, I had no idea what he was talking about.
Were you kind of like, oh, I'm not sure about this?
Well, I was more like, what have I got to lose with what happened to me? So, hey, okay, I'm just going to follow the flow. He wants to take me. All right. So 2 weeks later, I find myself driving my car to a different town than where I live. And I get into his car. I had just stopped using my wheelchair. And I'm nervous. I have no idea what I'm going to. And he drives me to a hotel in a totally different city than where I live. And we walk in, and I see this young man, and he looks at me, and he greets the dry cleaner and his wife, and he says to me, I don't even want to know your name. I'll see you in a little while. And I go up into a room, and there were 35 people in the room, and there were about 20 of them, and I was one of those, were what they call sitters, where they're people who have lost someone, and they want to, hopefully praying that they hear from their loved one. And then there are people they brought, because when you start to get messages from your loved one on the other side, you forget your name, you forget your country. So you need somebody, I mean, you're in such shock, oh my God. So you need someone to write down this information that is reeling out, that is just spewing out from this guy or woman or whoever it is who's doing it. So I was listening for about half an hour, 40 minutes, and all of a sudden, the medium said to me, I'm getting a message from someone who's talking about Dr. Pepper. I said, Dr. Pepper? I said to my dry cleaner, oh my God, Joel, start writing. I said, it's all 15 years before he met me. Saul's brother, who was an advertising executive in those days, was representing Dr. Pepper soda. And they were coming north or east from California. And his brother did a really wiseacre thing. And he wrote Saul's name into the commercial. And Saul used to joke about it all the time. How in the world could this man know this? And then it starts getting more interesting. He's holding up 2 fingers on one hand and one on the other. We raised his 2 children and my 1 son. He's telling me you died in a different state than where you live. He died in New York. We lived in New Jersey. He's holding up a can of tomato juice, and he's telling me it's about a joke that only the 2 of you shared. When my son was very, very little, Saul used to like to joke that Matt was so skinny that if you filled him with tomato juice, he'd look like a thermometer. I mean, there is no way that anyone could know this information. He's telling me that you were reading a book to prepare for coming here tonight. He's telling me you had a premonition that he was going to go, that you got a message before the accident happened. He went on and on and on. He named each of our kids. And this man is going on. Who was this man? It was John Edward, who's very famous today. It was long before he was as famous as he is now.
What year was it? What year did
this all happens? The accident was in 1997. And the actual communication with Saul happened in 1998. So guess who's the first person I called when I had no one else to tell that I had just spent 35 minutes with messages from my husband on the other side, and it was absolutely him, and I was amazed. My sister-in-law, who I thought was crazy. And she said to me, thank God, because 2 weeks after Saul died, I was working with a healer. And the healer said to me, Carolyn, I have a message for you from a soul on the other side named Saul. And she said, I said to him, Saul, what do you want with me? We weren't talking when you died. And he said, because I thought you were crazy, but you're not. And I have messages for Irene, and you're the only one who's open. And she said, I did not know how to tell you that information.
Did she give you the information?
The information, there was a message, there were messages about, there were 4 business deals I had been left with. Yeah. He literally said 3 will work out, 1 won't, and there was some information about them, and there was information about each of the kids.
So he was sending you basically text messages through your...
Yeah, basically.
That's awesome.
And he talked about experience.
So from that, how did that lead to the book?
So how it led to the book was, so now I start to get very open. Now I'm a believer, right? So I heard from him, wouldn't you want to hear more? So I start going to different spiritual things. I've never set a foot into a new age place or a spiritual place, but now I'm going. And I hooked up with this woman who did automatic writing, and she got some messages from Saul. And one of the messages was that she got them, and she said, Irene, I'm getting a message that you're supposed to write a book. I said, a book? What kind of book? I said, what? So she said, that's what I'm getting. So I started asking her questions, hoping that she could get information from Saul on the other side, since she was getting information for him. And he started saying something about past lives. And she said, I can't get past life information. But somebody recommended someone who could. And he started coming through this other woman like he was sitting next to me at the table. And I hadn't had no intention of writing a book, but I said, hey, what the heck? It's him. I started asking him questions. What's the deal with soulmates? What goes on when people commit evil? What do we all have past lives? What's heaven really like? And he starts giving me answers. And so now I'm accumulating all this information, and it's been quite an odyssey. And I wrote the book, and I'm very proud to say it has quite a few very positive 5-star reviews and all of that.
Now, was he communicating only with this particular woman, or was it various people that you would continue the communication with?
if I went to other people, Emmett, however he could get a message through, because people have different abilities, some are better at it than others. He described his genitals to me through someone. I mean,
you're like, that's you, baby. I know you.
He described his toes. He described what the outfit he wore the night that he died. He described the first meal I made him.
Just to make sure.
Just to make sure that I knew that it was really him. Well, if this was happening to you, wouldn't you keep going? I mean, oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's like having a window to somewhere else. That's like having an extra sense, which, I'm going to tell you a little bit. In the last 2 days, everything about this show has been about consciousness. Now, they're not posted yet, but I got a call automatically. Hey, I'd like to be on your show. I said, yeah, I'll call you. And with the gentleman and said, yeah, I'll call you and we'll see what we can work out. And so I called him and we start talking. And I said, well, this is supposed to be like a 5-minute conversation. We've been talking an hour or something. I'm going to hit record now. And we went somewhere deep.
Wow.
We went somewhere so deep. I was like, whoa. And I talked to a doctor who heals people from alcoholism. We barely talked about that. We went deep again into consciousness. And so this is how the world communicates. And this is what I want to say. This is why I talk to people like you who have experienced something else. Whether you believe it or not, it's still there for you because you are there for a specific people. There's somebody who's going to hear your message and they're going to say, okay, I'm all right.
Right. Emmett, I have to tell you, I tell people I'm not trying to establish a new religion. I'm not trying to convert you to anything. I am telling you my truth, and you have a choice. But I'll tell you something. I believe my angle on the dangle a lot more than other people's. If you believe that it's all over when it's over and that's it, God bless you. So but I know there's more.
Let me ask you something. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions here. I'm going to say a couple of words. What do you understand about love now?
It's all about love. And the source is really about love. When the people talk about God or whatever, I mean, literally, they said, I got be loving and kind to everyone. In fact, the subtitle of my book is One Couple's Story of Love, Eternity, and the Cosmic Importance of Everyday Life. And it's all about love. Can I tell you a little story?
Absolutely.
I so got into this that I started working with a medium. And she was fantastic. And we were traveling to different places, and it was life-changing for people. And it kept validating for me what had happened to me. And one day, we walked into a hotel in Vermont, and there was a young girl crying hysterically in the front row. The minute we walked in, this girl's deceased father came through. And we all found out through the reading that the night before he died, they had had a horrible fight and they called each other terrible names. And he came through to tell her that he loved her and that he was so sorry. And I have seen this happen over and over again. It's not about, as Saul said in the book, it's not about how much money you make. When you get over there, it's not about how much money you made. It's not about who you knew, did you receive, and did you give love. It's also about self-love. Did you love yourself as you love other people? Did you forgive? Were you able to, how did you process your life? And he talks about his own life review and what happened to him. You learn so much from the book, from what he has to say.
So,
and woven into a great love story, by the way. It's kind of a juicy love story. So, it's entertaining.
I'm going to go in a different direction here. Knowing what you know now, and you see that our country and the world is so divided, what would you say to the masses? Because everybody's looking at these groups. Okay, you're okay because you're in my group, and you're not okay because you're not in my group, and I'm okay because we're in the group together. What would you say to these people if I could put you on a pedestal where everybody in the world could hear what you have to say to squash everything? What would you tell them?
I would say that we need to honor each other and respect our differences. We have a right to agree to disagree, but what's happening now is all this dissension and all these problems on this planet it's interesting. It's bringing people together. I mean, that's and people with love. People are coming together, and they're being motivated to help other people. I've been watching websites where people are telling each other how they are helping each other, and they're beginning to dialogue with people who don't agree with them, which is very, very amazing, but in a loving way. Things are starting to change. And, I liken it to, how a toddler is learning to walk and they take a few steps forward and then they fall backwards and then they get up again and they walk forward. I think that's happening to the human race. We might have taken a few steps backwards to spurt more forward.
I never thought of it that way, that we might be regressing to move further ahead. That's a beautiful statement.
Right. Think about what's being magnified and what everyone is looking at. I really think that sometimes that's what happens. And if you look at history, that's what they say all the time. A few steps back, then we jump forward. We leap forward.
So with your newfound consciousness, how do you view people now, and how do you view every day of your life versus how you used to before this occurred?
I'm not a victim anymore.
Oh.
Like I used to go through life, saying, "Oh my God, this person has it against me, and this isn't working out. And why is this happening to me?" And all. The first thing I have to say is I understand now that life is about healing and evolving and moving forward in your life, and you have a choice if you want to do that. If you want to walk around with your bag of pain weighing down every single day, go for it. But there are so many ways that people can heal today. How it's changed me, I don't judge people anymore. I try not to. Let's put it that way. I try to think about people that they're on their own paths, and some of them maybe are just the beginning of their journeys. How can I judge them? The other thing that I'm more aware of being loving and kind to myself and forgiving myself for mistakes that I make, because I know that this is all a learning. This is school. That's home. So I'm in a learning curve all the time.
That's a good way to put it. This is school. That's home.
So you return there and you process what you learned in school and how you handled it before you choose to come back into that next lifetime. The other thing I've learned is to keep the toxic people. There are evil people. There are people who are toxic. Out of love for myself, I have an obligation to protect myself from those people as much as possible, and not to hate them. You can detach with love. Say, hey, I'm not going there with you. I'm not going into your swamp with you. You don't have to go there, and you don't have to take on what they're doing.
That's a very common thing today. If you look at television, if you look at your website, if you look at Facebook, you see a lot of toxicity in everyday life. And a lot of things are very, very low value. But here's the saving grace for that. There are communities of individuals who want to raise. Now, some people still think, oh, they're kind of crazy, kooky, but that's how it begins. It's just like a baby being born. It starts with one cell getting split into two, and so forth and so on. So if you could go back now, I don't know how old you are. You look pretty young to me.
I'm not. I'm a baby boomer.
I am too.
I'm a baby. Well, you look pretty good too.
No, I'm on the cusp. I'm on the cusp of the baby boomer Gen X thing. But if you could go back to, I'm going to pick a number, 29. If you could go back to your 29-year-old self, what would you tell that self?
Well, when I was 29, my entire family was not talking to me. I had been disowned by my entire family.
What did you do?
And, well, I took myself to therapy, which was the very beginning of starting my healing journey. And I remember being 29 and sitting in the therapist's office and crying about what did I do that my family should stop talking to me. And today I would tell her, honey, it's not you. It's their issues. You're fine. You need to stop ingesting what they're doing, what they're saying, and heal yourself. And you know what happened with that story?
What?
Many, many years later, after Saul died, actually a year before Saul died, my father, who was very abusive and was the reason that no one was talking to me. My mother was a battered woman, basically. My father died, but then Saul died, and I had a conversation with my mother, and I said, you know, Mom, you can change the legacy of this entire family. I said, I've been in therapy for so many years because you guys abandoned me and all the things that happened. I said, Mom, you have a choice now. Dad, with all his issues, is gone. What are you going to choose? My mother worked with a therapist, which was very unusual in those days, and she was in her 70s at the time. My brothers and I and their wives, we all got together with a therapist, and over a 5-hour session, we had a family healing. And today, my mother has all her grandchildren and her children and everyone, and we're all getting along. We absolutely broke through all of that dysfunction. And I tell people, you may not necessarily change the people around you or the people who affected you, but it's amazing if you change how they can choose to change in response to that or not. That's their choice. In my particular case, I didn't get up on a lectern. I wasn't lecturing anyone, but I changed. My mother chose to change. And then the others started coming around.
You know, that's what's really amazing. And this is the one thing that I find that human beings do not understand. They don't understand. There's several gifts that we got because we're particularly human. One of them is the gift of dreaming. But the biggest, most precious gift that we never talk about is free will.
That's right.
We individually have the ability to choose whatever we want. And some people say, oh, I didn't have a choice. You always have a choice. It may be uncomfortable, but it's a choice.
That's right. It's a choice. When they pulled me out of the car, aside from the voice that came into my head, I remember thinking at the time, I will get through this somehow because I have to be a role model for my son, Matt, who is going to have all kinds of pain and all kinds of things happening to him one day. So in that moment, I changed an attitude, and I decided that no matter what I had to do, I was going to be okay. Where other people would say, my life is over, I'm destroyed, I'm going to victimize everyone in my life, I'm going to carry this around, and everybody's got to, put up with me because who would go through something like this? Right?
Yeah. Yeah, we've all seen it.
Right.
Now, how can people reach you and how can they obtain the book?
Okay, well, there are two things they can obtain. I'm going to hold it up to your screen. This is the book, They Serve Bagels in Heaven, and they can get this through Amazon. And this is the audio book, They Serve Bagels in Heaven, which you can get through audible.com.
Audible's awesome.
Audible's awesome. And the book, I mean, it is a wonderful book. And I promise you will not be bored. It is a love story filled with juicy, amazing information. And you can reach me by reaching out to Irene at theyservebagelsinheaven.com, or you can go onto my website, www.theyservebagelsinheaven.com.
What about Facebook and Twitter?
Yes, we're on there too. And Instagram.
Good. Are you doing any speaking, or are you doing any workshops? Are you working with any groups to help?
Yeah, I get invited to do presentations quite a bit, and I tell my story. And in addition to that, sometimes I work with a medium. So after I do my presentation, the medium comes on, helps people communicate. She helps people communicate with the other side, and then the two of us will sit and answer people's questions about what we both learned, about what it's like. We've changed a lot of perceptions, and again, I tell people I'm not trying to give you a new religion. I'm giving you food for thought. We're planting seeds. And that's what we're doing. And other times, like I recently gave a presentation, and this was a spiritual awakening on my part. So they asked me to speak about the different ways people can awaken spiritually, and they also wanted to know about the cosmic importance of everyday life, and I spoke to that. So it depends on the venue. I really enjoy meeting people and giving presentations, and a lot of people tell me that a lot of people buy the book because they're curious. Other people buy the book because they're grieving and they need some comfort and solace, and the book will provide that for them also. And I was a grieving widow, so I can really understand where they're coming from.
Good. Well, I want to thank you for being on the Billionaire Lifestyle podcast and show. And I'm sorry about when I called you a month early. But thank you so much for being on the show.
This has been a true pleasure. And bless you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.